Who do you think deserves the most credit for the Chiefs Super Bowl run?
Well, I know on the last episode we talked about how we would never bet against Patrick Mahomes, but the more and more I've looked at the outcome of the game on Sunday and just the outcome of the Chiefs playoffs games in general, I'm starting to think Mahomes does not deserve all the credit or as much credit for this playoff run as he has in the past. I mean, the Chiefs only scored 17 points in their victory over the Ravens. If the Ravens had scored their season average, which was like 28 points a game, they would have won that game by a lot. They would have won it by two scores. The reason the Ravens lost is because the Chiefs defense shut down their offense. They weren't able to do anything. They weren't able to score. They weren't able to move the ball. They turned the ball over quite a few times. Without the Chiefs defense playing the way it did, if it was even an average defense and gave up like 20 points to the Ravens, that game would have been lost by the Kansas City Chiefs. So Mahomes, obviously, he had a few, Mahomes-like plays where he just did something amazing, made something happen. But honestly, I think right now, if you were to look at the Chiefs and say what's the driving force behind their playoff success so far, I'd have to say it's the defense.
Absolutely. And that defense really shut down Lamar. They did some crazy coverages that I even think left Lamar confused, especially on that one interception that he threw into triple coverage. That defense really shut down what the Ravens had going for them pretty much all season and really through the playoffs as well, especially when they played against the Texans in that second half where they kind of ran away with the game. And so like you start to look at these like breaking it down and yes, Mahomes is Mahomes, and he did some crazy stuff. The thing that comes to mind probably the most is when he had that initial scramble as the Ravens defenders were getting to him, and he just kind of like throws this like dead duck pass to Kelsey, and Kelsey just brings it on down. And that connection right there between those two individuals is really what fuels a lot of that Chiefs offense. But that Chiefs offense isn't able to capitalize on those key plays without the defense stopping the Ravens from scoring, running up to score. And we did talk about, for the longest time, even just leading up to the Chiefs playoff run, the wide receiver room could be an issue for the Chiefs. Throughout the season, we saw the problems offensively for the Chiefs. And, by only scoring 17 points, not only was that the Ravens defense holding Mahomes and Kelsey and some of those other offensive weapons to that, you know, the offense they didn't outdo themselves in terms of scoring so many points that, the Ravens just couldn't come back by. And so I absolutely agree with you, Rob. That Chiefs defense made a lot of stops and stands on key plays. Even that Zay Flowers fumble walking into the end zone, we talk about it being a pretty much one score game. If Zay Flowers holds on to that ball and it's not punched out by the Chiefs defender, that's a tie game right there. And, of course, hindsight's 2020 when you're looking back at things like that. But these key plays really stopped the Ravens' explosive offense from gaining key scores to keep them in the game, and not only just keep them in the game, but overpowering the Chiefs' offensive gains. But I also would like to show some credit to the offensive line for the Chiefs as well, because throughout the game, it was kind of surprising to me the lack of the Ravens defense getting to Patrick Mahomes. And it seemed like Mahomes had all this time to throw. And of course, there were some times where he had to scramble and run. But for a lot of times, it just seemed like Mahomes just had the time in the pocket to find those receivers, to find Rice downfield, to find Kelsey, and really be able to kind of exploit this Ravens defense. And if that offensive line didn't give Mahomes the time, we could see an absolutely different game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Chiefs have had one of the best offensive lines all season long. So it's no surprise that it's continuing in the playoffs and protecting Mahomes really well. So I think that kind of begs the question then, if you look at how good their defense was and how good their offensive line was, do you think another quarterback besides Mahomes would have also won in that situation? Like, let's say you put Dak Prescott back there. Let's say you put Baker Mayfield back there. Do you think those quarterbacks also would have won that game because of how well the defense and the offensive line played? Or do you think there was something Mahomes did in that game that no other quarterback would have been able to do that led to them winning?
I absolutely think the latter. I don't think there's another quarterback out there like Mahomes. And, you have the defense going for you. You have the offensive line blocking for you, giving you enough time in the pocket. But then you also have, the finishing part of that formula, that winning formula that the Chiefs have, and that's Mahomes. When you look at those key positions on the football field, quarterback is one of those the biggest key positions, especially for an offense. And without Mahomes, if you put Dak Prescott in here, if you put someone like Baker Mayfield, I think they will do decent, but I don't think that they have what it takes to win in clutch moments. And especially, Mahomes just finds a way, his natural ability to read the football field to make plays that were never designed for the way that they end up working out. He just has just this knack of turning disaster upside down into successful yardage, a successful play. And I honestly, there's now these kind of like debates of like, okay, well, who's better, Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes now that's going on? Or even going back to John Elway or, some of those other greats. And I think we are so fortunate in this time to see a quarterback like Mahomes because there really isn't any like him in the National Football League as we speak. And so I think you have that full equation. You have the Super Bowl caliber defense keeping your offense in despite the challenges that it's gone through. And then you have the offensive line giving Mahomes the time to really just pull plays out of a magician's hat, really, when things start to break down and plays maybe go awry. But then you have the X factor, which is Mahomes. And I think all those three, and then you add on Andy Reid's experience coaching and his success in coaching, and you have almost the perfect winning formula for a team that, even though they may have struggled in the season, you're seeing the formula starting to come together once again, like it always has under these influences, making a big playoff push leading to the Super Bowl. But what about you, Rob? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think someone like Dak Prescott or Baker Mayfield could excel in the same amount of Mahomes, or do you think there is something special just with Mahomes?
Oh, there's absolutely something special with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you just look at his whole career. I mean, no one else has ever done that except, Tom Brady. So it's pretty special. But in this specific game, I don't know if I saw Mahomes do anything that was like so special. I'm like, man, only Mahomes could have done that. I feel like if you put a Dak Prescott or like a Lamar Jackson or an Andy Dalton, even someone like that uh, on the Chiefs, I feel like they could have also led that offense to 17 points, assuming the defense, played the same way and held the Ravens to 10. I don't know if there was some like defining moment where I'm like, wow, Mahomes is the reason they won this game. I think it was mostly their defense and their offensive line giving Mahomes a lot of time to throw. That being said, I mean, there were a few plays where it was like, wow, like the one you mentioned where he was like falling to the ground and threw that lame duck pass to Travis Kelce. But I feel pretty confident there's at least like 5 or 10 other quarterbacks in the league right now who would have been able to lead that offense to 17 points and win that game. So, because it wouldn't even have to be 17, it could have been 13, and they would have still beat
Mhm.
them because they only scored 10 because of how well their defense played. So, I absolutely think you could have picked from any one of the best quarterbacks in the league and been like, this guy can at least get us 13 points against the Ravens.
Yeah, yeah, that is fair. That is fair. But what Kansas City has going for them is really, and we talked about this. Don't bet against Mahomes, and I honestly really do kind of believe that it's just he just has a way to make things work in sticky situations that most quarterbacks would feel the pressure and break, or they wouldn't be able to make the runs or see the field the way he does. And when you look on the flip side of the coin with the Ravens, how much of that game was on Lamar's shoulders? Like, do you think that Lamar's mistakes cost him the game. Of course, we talk about the Zay Flowers fumble, and that was really on the young rookie. But do you think, Rob, that the mistakes alone that Lamar made in the game against the Chiefs cost the Ravens the game?
Well, the one I keep going back to is when the Ravens had the ball. I think this was in the fourth quarter. They were driving down the field for the tying score, and then Lamar just decides to throw the ball into triple coverage. Like there's no one there except for Chiefs players. And obviously it gets intercepted. The Ravens, I have to say, they moved the ball pretty well against the Chiefs defense. It's just they never were able to do anything with it. The Chiefs defense always tightened up as soon as they got over, the 50-yard line. Uh, but that was probably the biggest mistake, and I think that was the final nail in the coffin when Lamar threw that interception. And there was really no reason for him to throw it. He had enough time left that if he just, ran the ball himself or just threw the ball away, even they could have still gone down the field and scored. He forced that throw to, no one in particular for no reason, and ultimately lost them the game that way. I think you could have come back from the Zay Flowers fumble, and honestly, I think you could have come back from the Lamar interception, but I don't think you could come back from both at the same time. So
Yeah.
after the Zay Flowers fumble, I feel like Lamar really needed to step up and play clean, mistake-free football. And he wasn't able to do that, which is ultimately why the Ravens lost.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's not on Lamar's shoulders per se, in terms of the blame for the loss, who would you blame more? Which unit then would you blame more for the Ravens' loss against the Chiefs?
Oh, well, I think it absolutely is on Lamar's shoulders. I
Oh,
think they're
okay.
collapsed entirely, and a lot of that is because of Lamar. I think their offensive coordinator was not calling his best game. I think a lot of his concepts and play calls were really simple and easy for the Chiefs defense to sniff out. Obviously, Zay Flowers fumbling the ball. It was just a very sloppy, bad performance by pretty much everyone on the offensive side of the ball for the Ravens. Outside of the, 5 catches for like 100 yards or whatever Flowers had previous to the fumble, that the entire offense was just really, really bad. And that might just be a function of also, the Chiefs defense being really, really good, but there's certainly things the Ravens offense could have done better. That if they had done better, they would have won the game. Like you mentioned before, if Zay Flowers hadn't fumbled that ball, it would have been at least a tie game.
Yeah.
Anything could have happened if the game went into overtime. So the Ravens offense really let the team down because their defense was terrible, like for the first quarter of the game, but then they really tightened up in the second quarter. And they never, I don't think they gave up another touchdown after what, like the first or second quarter, right? They
Yeah.
were phenomenal in the second half of that game. And the Ravens offense just was not able to capitalize.
Yeah. Now, obviously, MVP only is in regards to season and season performances. But for this sake, if it did include the playoffs, would Lamar Jackson still be your MVP, Rob?
No, absolutely not. I mean, this is why it's a regular season only award because if you were going to pick an MVP based on the playoffs, it always have to be someone who was in the Super Bowl, probably on the
Hmm.
Super Bowl winning team.
Yeah.
Um, so no, Lamar would not be my MVP right now, and sadly, neither would Dak Prescott. But that's not here nor there. I think right now, if you're looking at who the MVP is, I would probably guess Mahomes would win it. If all the
Yeah.
voters were to have like a clean slate and vote again with like the postseason results included, I'd imagine Mahomes would win. How about do you think Mahomes would also be the MVP if yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely put his name in the ring. And obviously I agree. There's a reason why it's a season award and not looking at the postseason because I absolutely agree. It's right. It's going to be, it would have to be a player from the Super Bowl winning team because then you'd always have oh, well, he did lose in the playoffs because of this. And that's why, he's not going to get it. But I find that so interesting because of course, going into the playoffs, everyone was so just big on Lamar Jackson. And, I think, that playoff record coming in where it was just one win to his four appearances in the playoffs prior to this, a playoff run. I think a lot of people had high hopes for him, especially after the Texans game. And so to just see him kind of be one of the root causes for the the Ravens kind of breakdown, of something that was super strong throughout the season. uh, how many points did they score? running up the last couple of games of the season, almost 40 plus, almost every single game. And they were against tough opponents like the 49ers, like some of those like greatly built teams, and they were scoring 40 on them. And so, then you start to look at this game in the playoffs, and the Ravens are at home too, so they had home field advantage. They had the crowd behind them. And then, the Chiefs defense just kind of shut it all down. So I think it's kind of interesting, if they did include Lamar's postseason run, and honestly some of their failures, I think that the MVP choice would move on to somebody else. And that's, I think it's super interesting. Yeah. Thank you for joining us on the Redzone Rodeo podcast.
If you like football and you like having fun, come on down and subscribe or check out our channel for more videos like this one.
No ifs, ands, or buts. This is the best place for your football news.